The tryout is you start at the bottom of the hill and they say go. And then if you make it to the top faster than the rest, that's where it starts. It was kind of ingrained into me, like, if you want to do something in this world, you should go to LP and try to work on the Hotshots. So that was the immediate goal. And from literally that day on, it was like, I want to be on LP. You go up, you hike, you make face, and let them see what you're worth. And then they make their decisions based on when it comes to hiring on that. And I put in the effort every week, went up and spent the time with Matt, went up the hill with Matt. And then when it came time to hire, I got a phone call. Matt is a very fair individual with high expectations and justified to have those expectations. He's highly intelligent. He was going to kill me that I said that, but he's smart. And we used to play each other in chess all the time. And I think I won one game out of 60 games. I used to get so mad. I'm like, how are you good at chess? And I thought I was a chess guy. I'm not, but I was like, he's not gonna play chess. He's a hotshot. Of course he can play chess. Of course he's like some chess player. What can't you do? I've seen the guy out, surfing. When the waves there's nobody out, Matt's out. He's just kind of that. He's just a very unique individual. We always called him a shapeshifter, because it's he's got that Aoki side of the indigenous side of can you actually shapeshift? Because I'm pretty sure you were just 3 miles away and you're next to me right now. Did you literally turn into an eagle and fly here? Because there's no way you could have done that. The way he operates, the way he solves problems, his decision making, how he carries himself. Man, a few words doesn't speak a whole lot. Now that we're good friends, I know who he is and have a different relationship with him, actually hearing talk to him more and more. He just makes good decisions. He's smart, he's fair, he takes input, will listen to you, and I think truly wants to see the folks that come through that crew that put on the buckle be something. You have to show him the effort that you want to be something, and he will give you the tools to be something. And that, I think, is what that crew does the best, is people get there and they're like, I'm here, I want to be something here. That's why, when we first started, you speak about the individuals who started there, who are now superintendents here and superintendents here, they went on to be something, and they always will never forget to give the credit to where they started, because of what they exude out of that crew. And they've continued to do so. Like I said, I was there for a short duration, and it's been 15, 16 years or so, and it's just same product, same process, same attitudes. They're just good at what they do. As soon as I get in that pickup truck and I hit whatever highway it is, or the 5 or whatever it is, the first person I call is Matt. Always. Hey, where are you at? You been here? What's this look like? Or are you there? And I'll spend 45 minutes, hour with him on the phone, just talking. I think, and this is just my opinion, I think that all of us inherently want to be led at some point or another. And Matt was one of those individuals who I was inherently wanted to be led by. And then when you find yourself of oh, am I going to be a company officer now? Am I going to be a captain? Am I going to be in this seat? I'm glad I paid attention. I'm glad I watched. I'm glad I listened. I'm glad I observed. And from the leadership out there that you get to witness and try to absorb. And I tell folks this here, I'm not original. I am a replica of everyone that I wanted to be. The way I walk, talk, speak, key the mic is all based on somebody I wanted to be like. The upper percentage of that comes from the folks on the Hotshots and the folks that I spent time with there. We've got some great individuals throughout, the rest of the fire service. But like I said, doing difficult things together is a tough one to mimic every day. And they don't know it. Matt and I talk now, that we're friends, and he's 15, 16 years ago of what my perception was of him. And but I call him every time. Why wouldn't I? Chances are he's been there or been on the dirt, or maybe shape-shifted there last week. Who knows, to check it out. But those are the cool things. I guess to circle back on your last question too, is I hope that the Hotshots don't lose that and the generation doesn't forget that, which I think could easily happen. Makes me nervous. We use the term elite I think that generally kind of correlates with somebody in the special forces of what their expectations are for the physical side of it. And then also the mental toughness of it, of day in, day out, of what your workload looks like, tasks, all the stuff that come along with how they fight fire, I think can correlate with the mental capacity and also the physical fitness load, problem solving, decision making, stress management of individuals of the special forces. So I think that's where the correlation comes from, if that answers the question. Los Padres Hotshots have a long-standing reputation based on leadership. I think where their leadership started, how it's grown, being one of the first to kind of really, enter the IHC community and put IHCs on the map. A lot of these individuals, you always fall back on, kind of your roots. So you have superintendents, you have captains or foremen or these individuals working throughout the nation who started on LP. As they progressed through their hotshot career, they ended up throughout, the state or even the nation working on other hotshot crews. So I think that there's kind of this centralized ideal of leadership from those individuals who started on LP, and they've kind of moved throughout the community. And I think that the network has expanded of the foundation of being rooted in LP. So I think that's why you hear LP this, because of there's so many people who've worked there, who've, moved throughout their careers in leadership and are now either superintendents or they're captains, and you'll hear them fall back on when I was on LP, or back when I was on LP. Not to discount that the leadership there is exponentially great. And I think it shows when individuals still fall back on it. What Mother Nature does is always the variable based on, precipitation and the forecast and the predictions of what's going to happen. But I think that the overall tactics and strategy of how they fight fires has exponentially grown, over the past 50 years through the leadership and the decision making and what works and what doesn't, and the evolution of, from the IRPG, which is one of the things we use the most, of the evolution of that, of what gets added, and then kind of keeps growing and growing because of these things that continually happen, or something brand new that happens, like, we should talk about that. So I feel like there's a constant evolution of growth and knowledge and education. My old man just told me when I was a kid, he's like, Mother Nature remains undefeated, dude. So take that how you want it. In all aspects. The wildfire component, we're kind of at the mercy of her and what she decides to do for the day to allow successes or not. It's not the firefighters. Like, we're at the mercy of her. The Sundowners, the Type 2 hand crew, really sets a good tone of what the expectations are. So I kind of had a fine tuning of expectations of what it looks like for you to work there. And it proved sound. The effort that you put in and, the time that you spend on the hill and the time that you spend trying to capture information and learn and, from your path to get there, it's a grind, but it's doable. I'd hiked with Matt a bunch, going up, there every week, and, they drive up the top of the pass and drop down to the canyon and go spend time and walk, and you talk, coming down the hill, what their expectations are, and hey, you did good, this is the time you had today, and they kind of give you your times of where their expectations are and the hiking component of it. Once you get there, you see the individuals who are there and what capacity they're at. It's a pretty quick learning curve to see, okay, either I have a lot of work to do or I came in ready. Whether it's athletic background, whether it's whatever your physical fitness background is, you'll find out the first day real quick where you sit there and if you've got a lot of work to do or just some fine tuning. As a first season, you're sitting in this room, I made it. I'm sitting with, in the presence of these guys who it's a goal, right? Now you're trying to I need to fit in here. And then however they paint that picture of who LP is, you automatically kind of move into a need for a mentorship because you have these individuals who have this incredible experience and they're these respected leaders naturally, right? And they don't like to talk about it, you know what I mean? Which is probably makes them who they are. When they start to develop and teach you the curriculum, it's a really invigorating process because they're speaking from experience. The stuff that they're teaching you, the stuff that they're asking of you are all things that they've done. It's not just coming out of a book. They're constantly pushing you to learn to not just capture, hey, this is a physical job, right? You have to have that component of it. They truly do, I think, support decision making, letting you make the mistake instead of like a micromanaging immediate correction. It's funny, I spoke with Matt, probably a week ago or so, and he was like, during training, I remember you were doing a firefighter one thing, and now I ask you, are you sure? After I made a decision, and he's like, he looked at me like, I don't know, am I wrong, And he's like, well, I don't know, are you? And you're like, I got to be wrong, But he doesn't say anything. He just sits there and, kind of looks at you, and you're like, well, I think, no, I want to do this. And he's okay, we'll do it. And he doesn't really tell you if you're on the right direction or not, which is good because at the end of the, whatever we were doing, he's like, yeah, that was right. And you're like, this whole time I wasn't sure, but they want you to be sure of your decision making, and they like really push that for the confidence building in it versus, getting the immediate correction and not letting the individual move through the mistake, because we all know the phrase of we learn from our mistakes, and it couldn't be any more accurate in that world. My first season on LP, I pulled for the lead saw. Second season, I ended up cutting for third saw. And then my last season there, I did 3 there, was lead sawyer. So there's a progression for sure. If you're asking if there's pressure in that seat, there's pressure in that seat. In theory, everybody wants that job. Somebody's coming for your job if you're not producing the results up front, which is good, I think, which helps drive the productivity of the overall objectives of the crew is when the lead sawyer is moving at a pace that is, the goal is to never get caught. LP runs 2 buggies, and then they'll have 2 saw teams on each. So full crew, if both are together, you'll have 4 saw teams. Behind that, depending on what fuel type it's in, they'll mix and move, the guys on hand tools around, to make the most success of the actual hand line going into the dirt. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, are aware, the Pulaskis, you've got some Rogues, you've got your monkey paws in the back, you've got some combi tools. Typically, the leaders carry the combi tools, some sort of trenching tools, depending on what the fuel type is. Maybe there's a McLeod in the mix. So there's a couple standard tools that are always going to be in there, but based on the fuel type, you might see, somebody grab something different, to be more advantageous in the fuel type for the day or whatever the incident, is asking for. You have this dinosaur brush in the LP, right, where the sawyers are just getting ruined all day. Just big brush, cutting. You've got the scrapes sitting behind you because you guys are just getting worked up front. And then you move into, NorCal, you get up in the timber, where now the sawyers just live in trees, and the guys in the back scraping are just getting ruined trying to put hand line in, duff that's 3 feet deep. The pullers are carrying fuel. So they're like your mobile gas station behind you when you're cutting. They have the most unique gear because they by far have the most weight out of everybody that's carrying on the crew. Might be some, maybe rite of passage to wear that pack before you get to put a saw on your shoulder, which, Jordan got to wear that pack and find out real quick how much that weighs when you're carrying that thing up a hill, and all you can hope is that your sawyer is cutting endlessly to empty those fuel tanks and the cigs and the oil as quickly as possible, so your pack lightens up. There's always going to be the sawyer puller relationship. Love-hate always ends in love, but there's the other portion of it too. When pulling is, I don't think anybody's going to argue, the most difficult spot. Finding that relationship of how your puller can be the most efficient with how you're cutting the brush. I was cutting, and I had a puller with me named Lucas Grant, great dude. And I was cutting bushes, and we weren't moving real quick. So Matt comes up, and he's like, hey, let me talk to you for a minute. I said, sure, come over. He's like, you got to cut bushes to the puller, not to you. He's like, you're cutting bushes like you would have pulled bushes. And I'm like, okay. And he's 5'8". I'm a little bit different size. So it's just dynamics. But in my mind, you're not thinking, you're like, oh, this is what it is. And he's like, oh man, you gotta cut him, dude. He can't move him. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. And he's poor guy's just getting ruined behind me, and I'm just keep moving. But so that whole duration, we're talking about the love-hate, that was probably a heavy hate for him at that time. And then once I figured it out, now all of a sudden he likes me again. Now we're moving, making progress. So it's things like that, I think, that make the IHC so unique of the relationship building, because doing things difficult together is probably the most significant way to build relationships. Levels of respect, doing difficult tasks together. And they do that. It's very, very easy to form lifelong friendships. I see guys on fires in the summertime I haven't seen in, 15 years, and it's like we never left. Because there's just something about it. I know what you did. You were there, and I was there too, and it was miserable and hard, and we got through it. We were successful, and something unique about it. It's hard to mimic. So when they talk about, go back to special forces and this kind of like, it's kind of got a correlation, right? About what those folks are doing and what they're doing and how the relationships, and, we've got a handful of guys here, folks here, who are Marines and, all veterans, and same concept of going through boot camp with, the folks and, guys who've been in combat, etc. He's like, yeah, those are lifelong friendships. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what the Hotshots do all summer long. Watching the folks who've done it with families and kids, from the duration that they do it in the summertime and the fatigue, the overall lack of communication based on, I don't have cell service for the next 10 days. And I've got 2 kids at home. I've got a wife, whatever it may be. It's taxing. Having a strong foundation at home and having a good support system is key. Patience, communication, trying to give them any information you can get on when you're coming home, when you're going to have cell service, and, falling off the grid for 10 days, hoping everything's, still standing when you get home. So my first fire on the Hotshots, we showed up at night, and I'm brand new, don't really know what the process is yet, and everybody's kind of hanging out waiting, and then could have been an hour. Matt comes back and says, hey, let's go to work. And, we ended up burning throughout the whole night. Didn't put any hand line in, just burned. That first year is really just, your eyes are just wide open. I don't want to say you don't have an idea of what's going on, but you're just kind of inherently observing all the things that are going on around you. First fire for me was just, wow, this is what they get to do. Hey, get up here, grab a torch, you're doing it. You're like, these guys are, the guys you want to be, and you're starting it. You see it right there. You're like, oh man, I want to mess this up. There's a bunch of different sounds that kind of make your heart jump. Trees falling a couple of few days after fire comes through and hearing snags hit the ground. The sound of a crown fire moving in the timber, pretty distinct sound. There's been some hot ones. For sure. It's funny, all these stories always revert back to Matt. Maybe it's because Matt was there because he's my captain, so he was usually right next to me. And we were on an IA in carp, and it was cutting a piece of underslung line, backing down maybe foot and a half chemise, kind of dead, maybe 2 foot flame lengths, which doesn't seem that dramatic. But the heat that day was incredibly hot. And I remember looking at Matt, and there's kind of some bigger brush in the upper story of us, and Matt standing next to me. He's like, you good? I'm like, can we get some water on this? And he's like, we're trying, because the ships weren't up yet, and they were trying to figure it out. And he's like, it's hot. I'm like, this is hot. This is hot. And the human body does interesting things when it's that hot and you're working. You'll find yourself feeling real interesting sometimes. So when they talk about the mental aspect of it and putting kind of your mind over the body to move, and it'll really test your mental toughness. If I'm not dying right now, even though I feel like I'm dying inside, my mind wants to tell me I'm dying, but I'm not dying, and just to keep moving. And then you kind of if you keep moving, eventually you just kind of forget about it, and then you realize you didn't die, and then you're still cutting. You're asking yourself, like, is my body shutting down right now, or is this? And then you just keep working. And then the helicopter comes, and then you're finally like, oh man, we got a break. The things cool down. You're like, oh, we can keep working. The individuals that I had met that had worked there previously and even were there when I got there, there was a really good sense of pride in what they were and the confidence that they had, because I truly believe that nobody ever got good at something thinking they weren't good at it. I think there's a level of confidence and pride that those individuals carry when they have that buckle on that will uplift you into the sense of how you produce your work ethic, what your expectations are of all individuals, and being a part of that and being a part of something that was successful. And then, like I said, your first season, you're just kind of taking it all in. Your second, you're like, oh, you're kind of starting to figure it out. In your third season, and like, it's so unique. I think that's why the buckle means something, to be a part of that. IHCs have different, I guess, rites of passage or whatever it is for their buckles, but LP gives a buckle for every year. Some people are 2, some people are 3, and the leadership there said, no, you do a season here, you get a buckle. And I'm on board with that. I think, what they go through, and if you make it through it, and like Jordan did, and you find out a lot about your body and your mind and all the things that it's capable of or not capable of, and it's rewarding. I mean, the fuel types are going to be different, when you move throughout the states. Elevation, that's a humbling one for sure, coming out of Santa Barbara, and then next thing you know, you're in Colorado and you're starting at the base at 8,000, and now you got to go on a walk. You thought you were in shape until kind of the more you learn of what fuel burns in certain types of weather versus, like, it doesn't always have to be hot and dry, like the assumption is, right? It doesn't always have to have an east wind on it. And then, what are the local factors of this state? What are their, diurnal impacts of their weathers throughout the day that can impact fire behavior, et cetera. So that's what's so unique about the Hotshots, is they have to have this overall general knowledge of pretty much everything. What happens in Colorado? What happens in Nevada? What happens in Wyoming? They have an idea of what all the local factors are from experience, because they've been there. It's situational awareness, which is you capturing everything around you that you can or trying to. The hazard assessment, hazard control, the decision, and then to evaluate. And that now implies into risk versus gain. So when you look at these fires coming across the nation, or in California specific, the risk of the individuals versus the property, and the decision that these individuals have to make to say, we can't do that because of the safety factor it puts on the firefighters. But you have to have another idea of what to do. You don't just get to say, we can't do that. When you properly refuse risk, which is what that is in theory, the public doesn't often understand that the Hotshots have to do that consistently, and so do the municipal folks as well. You can refuse it, but you have to have an alternative. So, hey, we can't do this, but we can do this. Sometimes I think the public, like I said, the perception is like, why aren't you in there? Why aren't we in there? They have to have an understanding of the knowledge and the decisions that are coming from these individuals are coming from a high level of experience and decision making, and understanding that it's always for the safety of the firefighters versus the dirt or the property, because nobody's life is worth a house, and they have to make that decision. It's stressful. I think it just comes back on the communication with the public on the back end of understanding, and the education of the public of what it actually is and what the capabilities are of the individuals who are in the firefight. If it's doable, they're going to do it. And if it's not, they're going to make a decision. I hope the pride doesn't die. I hope that people, when they make it, that they feel the sense of pride, the sense of what it takes, capturing the confidence that it builds in you, and also the true understanding of the leadership out there is elite, and to not forget that generationally these are folks that you want to be like, and it's not just to say you did. And you have guys like Matt and the guys that I was fortunate to work under, and you hope that when they leave, that the individuals spent the time, the phone calls, the questions, to try to get as much out of these folks as you possibly could. Maybe someday you find yourself in that seat, hopefully being able to pass on that knowledge. The line of communication of the experience these individuals have, and we're kind of in this phase right now where, Matt's got a couple years left, a couple individuals with some significant experience, and also some of the best leadership qualities I've come across are retiring, and now it's, were you paying attention? Because it's your turn now. So the hope is that for the growth of the Hotshots, that they're still looking to these individuals as mentors, because whether they want to be or not, they are.